It always feels new. You turn on the TV today or scroll through your feed, and you see heated arguments about immigration. Some people say it's destroying the country. Others say it's what keeps the country alive. There are stories of crime, stories of opportunity, stories of people sneaking across borders, and stories of people working harder than anyone else to build a better life. It feels like the defining debate of our time. But here's the thing. It has always felt that way. Every single generation in American history has lived through its own immigration debate. And when you look back, you realize something shocking. The arguments never really change. The faces and places change, but the script is almost identical. That's why, if you listen carefully, today's political battles over immigration sound eerily like the ones people were having 100, 200 years ago. To understand why, we need to rewind to the very beginning. America's story itself starts with immigration, even before it was officially a nation. The first Europeans to arrive, the Pilgrims, the Puritans, the settlers in Virginia, were immigrants. They came for religious freedom, for wealth, for land, for survival. But the moment they arrived, they saw themselves as real Americans and drew a line between themselves and the newcomers who would follow. It's a paradox that has shaped the country ever since. The children of immigrants quickly become skeptical of the next wave of immigrants. In the 18th century, Benjamin Franklin was already worried about immigration. You'd think he, one of the most enlightened thinkers of his age, would embrace diversity. Instead, Franklin fretted that too many Germans were moving to Pennsylvania. He thought they wouldn't learn English, wouldn't assimilate, and would overwhelm the culture. If you replace Germans with Mexicans or Chinese or any other group that has faced suspicion in different eras, Franklin's complaint could have been written yesterday. That's how far back this pattern goes. Fast forward to the 19th century. This was the age of mass immigration. Between the 1820s and the Civil War, millions poured in from Ireland and Germany. The Irish were fleeing famine, the Germans were fleeing political upheaval, and they all arrived in cities like Boston and New York, desperate for work. What happened? They were immediately met with hostility. Newspapers ran cartoons portraying the Irish as apes or drunkards. Political parties like the Know-Nothings rose to power with a single message: stop immigration. They said immigrants were ruining wages, crowding neighborhoods, and bringing dangerous new religions, Catholicism in this case, that threatened Protestant America. If you compare those old headlines with headlines about immigrants today, the similarity is chilling. The arguments didn't just rhyme, they're almost word for word the same. After the Civil War, the story repeated with new characters. This time, it was Chinese immigrants who became the target. Tens of thousands came to the American West to build the railroads, mine gold, and work jobs most others didn't want. Their presence fueled one of the ugliest backlashes in U.S. history. Newspapers accused them of stealing jobs and undercutting wages. Politicians claimed they were biologically unfit for democracy, unable to ever become American. The result was the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, the first federal law in American history that explicitly banned immigration based on nationality. Imagine that, a country built by immigrants writing laws to keep out more immigrants. And if you listen to the arguments used to justify the ban, they sound eerily like what you hear in today's debates. But it didn't stop there. The late 19th and early 20th centuries saw waves of newcomers from Southern and Eastern Europe: Italians, Poles, Russians, Jews. Once again, they were met with suspicion. People said they were dirty, criminal, anarchist, too foreign to ever assimilate. An entire movement emerged to protect America from being changed by them. The climax came in the 1920s with the Immigration Act of 1924, which slammed the door shut. This law introduced strict quotas based on nationality. The goal was clear: to keep out undesirable groups and preserve the dominance of Northern and Western Europeans. It's a stunning reminder that America's immigration system has always been shaped by fear just as much as by hope. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Over time, the children and grandchildren of those once despised groups became accepted as real Americans. The Irish, who were once called apes, they became cops, politicians, and even presidents. The Italians, who were once labeled criminals, they became mayors, business leaders, Hollywood icons. The Jews, who were seen as foreign outsiders, they became central to American culture and innovation. This pattern repeats so reliably that you could almost predict it. Today's immigrants are tomorrow's mainstream. The mid-20th century brought another shift. After World War II, America gradually dismantled its old quota system. In 1965, the Immigration and Nationality Act transformed everything, opening the doors to immigrants from Asia, Latin America, and Africa. And just like clockwork, the cycle repeated. The new arrivals were accused of not assimilating, of speaking strange languages, of bringing crime or taking jobs. Sound familiar? By the 1980s and 1990s, the focus was on Mexican immigration. By the 2000s, it was on immigrants from the Middle East. The script never changes. It only updates the cast. But there's a twist. Every time immigration becomes the big crisis of an era, it also becomes the engine of America's renewal. Immigrants didn't just take jobs, they created new ones. They didn't just consume culture, they transformed it. America's most iconic foods, music styles, and technologies often came from immigrant communities. From pizza to jazz to Silicon Valley startups, immigration has been a constant source of reinvention. That's the side of the story that often gets lost in the heat of the debate. So, why does the debate always look the same? Partly it's human nature. People fear change. They worry that newcomers will erase what they value. But history shows the opposite. Newcomers don't erase America. They expand it. They force the definition of American to grow. And in doing so, they keep the country alive and adaptable. Every generation struggles with this tension. But it's that very struggle that defines America's identity. Think about it this way. In 1850, people said the Irish could never be American. In 1900, they said the same about Italians. In 1950, about Jews and Eastern Europeans. In 1980, about Mexicans. And in 2000, about Muslims. Today the groups change, but the refrain stays the same. They'll never be American. And yet, every time, they prove that wrong. The debate recycles, generation after generation, but the outcome is always the same. Yesterday's outsiders become tomorrow's insiders, which brings us back to today. The reason immigration debates feel so familiar is because they are. They've been happening for 250 years, and if history is any guide, the loudest fears we hear right now will one day sound as outdated as Benjamin Franklin worrying about Germans in Pennsylvania. That doesn't mean the debates are meaningless, far from it. Immigration has real challenges and real consequences. But it does mean that if you want to know where America is headed, history gives us a clue. The cycle will keep repeating, the cast will keep changing, and the American story will keep being rewritten by people who, at first, were told they didn't belong. So, when you hear the arguments raging today, remember, you're not hearing something new. You're hearing the latest version of the oldest American debate. That's why every immigration debate in America looks the same. And maybe, just maybe, recognizing that pattern is the first step to finally breaking it.